Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome in, everybody. It is a wild and crazy Monday edition of Sports Daily. The big, massive, landscape-changing thing of college athletics that we've been waiting for has at least begun to happen. It may not be done yet. I don't think that it is. I'm Jacob Albracht alongside Tommy Castor. Chad Chambers with us here today. Manning that IHOP hotline, 869-1240, which is open for you as usual. Thanks for listening to us here on KFH, #1 sports station in Wichita. Also, thanks for watching us on our video stream, now available to you on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch. All you got to do is follow the KFH Facebook page to see it on there. And then for YouTube and Twitch, you can just search KFH Radio to get those. Glad to be here with you, everybody, this morning. Tommy, how are you?
You know, it was one heck of a weekend. Glad it's over with. Glad I'm back here on a Monday. Looking forward to jumping right into it today.
It's been a topic that is just, for us, because we feel like it is going to affect the Big 12 inherently and then affect Kansas State and Kansas. This thing has been something we've followed. What are we looking at now? Almost a full year since USC and UCLA left. And really, if you go back to Texas and Oklahoma, it's been longer than that. This seismic change across college athletics and really college football, if we're being real here, has been coming. It's been evolving. I know that people get really annoyed and bothered by this, but throughout the show today, it all makes sense, and it was the only path forward in reality. And, for the Pac-12, a league with lots of history, and I feel for the Pac-12. I feel for the Pac-12 fans. Mismanagement in that league basically cost them their league. They're pretty much done here. At least, the version of it we know. And, that almost happened to the Big 12, and it was terrifying. So I get it. I feel for the Pac-12, but it was self-inflicted, almost 100%. None of this, it felt like, had to happen if they would have thought forward and looked ahead. And if there's anybody else out there, ACC, that thinks you're immune to this, or think you're, whatever your current TV deal or granted right, whatever, it's throw it out the window, because it doesn't matter. Now, the Pac-12's was, their most fatal flaw was that they made it so easy for everybody to leave. It won't be as easy for ACC schools, but, you're sitting there, if you're the ACC, I don't care if it's 2023 in August or 2033 in August. You're going to get poached. It's coming as soon as it can happen, because for the schools in the league, you can't afford not to do it if you want to stay competitive at the highest levels. And so we'll see what happens in the ACC. Florida State has a big decision to make before August 15th. Early predictions on this stuff. I believe it was a Barstool guy. I don't know his name, but it was a Barstool reporter who had Clemson and Florida State being a part of this, breaking away from the ACC, and he's been right so far. And it's been an interesting thing, too, because Everything's filled with rumors. Now in the aftermath, you remember how crazy Friday morning was, Tommy? You go back now and you read reports that directly cite administrators. It was that crazy for them too. Like they, the roller coaster and what they thought Thursday night versus Friday morning versus Friday afternoon, it was just all over the place. And it almost felt like at that point, finally, Kliavkoff, or however he pronounces his last name, the Pac-12 commissioner, it felt like, and I know that this isn't true, but it's what it felt like from the outside, finally felt the urgency of like, oh my God, we got to get something done here. Like, we're going to lose our schools. And it was too little too late. They couldn't get it done.
Yeah, it made for really high-level drama on Friday and made for really good topics on talk radio.
Right.
It was on TV, like, crazy. And I'll tell you, like, one of my favorite genres of entertainment is that survival of the fittest, type thing where you've got a battle for power, and whether it's a scripted drama or a reality show, like I love it. I'm in on it all the time. And this was the college athletics version of that, where you've had, different conferences and different schools battling for supremacy. And I think all along, we basically predicted, and everybody did, the demise of the Pac-12 in some way, shape, or form. It never seemed feasible for the Pac-12 to continue on in their current state after USC and UCLA left for the Big Ten. And the fact that it was very publicly stated that they weren't interested in going out and trying to do anything to strengthen their foothold with that conference. And so by standing pat and by overvaluing themselves to the network, that ultimately cost them the conference. And so I think that was a huge part of it, where we all kind of knew, and it was kind of telegraphed from months ago. I mean, I remember us talking about, and other people talking about, the four corner schools being viable for the Big 12, like in the spring. I mean, it's been a while. Like that's been suggested for a long time. Kind of go off that, and you start looking at other options and other potentials, and UConn got in the mix, and then the San Diego State thing was going on, and like there were all these different other things to distract away. But ultimately, all along, the four corner schools, they were the primary targets for the Big 12. Colorado came first, and the other three followed. And it just, I mentioned this last week. I don't have really any sympathy for the Pac-12. I feel bad for the fans of the schools that are being left behind, like Oregon State, Washington State, Stanford, Cal. I feel bad for them, but I feel like this could have been easily avoided if the Pac-12 would have been willing to be more aggressive and bold and innovative in what they wanted to do and what they plan to do long term for their own viability.
Yeah, it is sad for the fans. I wish the Pac-12, like, the Pac-12 is cool, Pac-12 after dark, right? Like, it had a lot going there. It just, when USC and UCLA left, you have to look yourself in the mirror at that point, right? Like, you have to look yourself in the mirror, and you can say all you want about academics lining up and all, and that's all. It doesn't matter in this conversation, right? In this conversation, it is about athletics, and your biggest revenue driver, right, outside of like endowment type stuff that you'll have at your university. So you can't be so naive to think that there's much of an appetite without USC and UCLA when Washington and Oregon so clearly wanted from the beginning to get to the Big Ten. Like, you can't look at that honestly and say we're still one of the best. Like, Bob Bowlesby gets a lot of grief. Like, people throw stones at him all the time. But if the Big 12 didn't go and add Cincinnati, Houston, BYU, and UCF, they are not in this position today. Absolutely. There is no way. The difference in how this was handled from the Big 12 standpoint to the Pac-12 is that the Big 12 had a real honest conversation with itself a long time ago. Now, the honest conversation was that Texas is far more valuable than anything else we've got, and Oklahoma to a degree as well. Tommy, Texas and Oklahoma have been trying to leave for a long time, like for a long time. The Longhorn Network was created to appease it, right? Yep. The Big 12 understood it. Like they're just more valuable. What can we do? Well, here, have this Longhorn Network. Here, have a little more extra, money out of the play. Like whatever it had to do, it was honest at least in understanding that. And then when those two left, because it's been able, the league, to have this honest conversation, whether people want to admit it or not, and it can make you mad, but it's true. The rest of the teams didn't quite fit with those two. And so it was like, okay, well, what can we do now? Well, let's go add some other teams that we think have a lot of upside and the arrows pointed up. That's what they did. They were big enough when the time came that the same exact thing happened with USC and UCLA to the Pac-12, where the Pac-12 looked at itself in the mirror and said, man, we still look really good. Like, look at how smart we are. Look at how pretty we are. We're still this great thing. We've been here forever. Like that, we're going to be fine. No. That's not the reality of it. The reality is the other programs just aren't nearly as valuable. And they were never able to look at that and honestly come to, because had they done that, Tommy, they could have gone and done the same thing the Big 12 did and add Boise State and San Diego State and UNLV and whoever, Colorado State, I don't care. Get a little bigger so that you have something to negotiate with, to bargain with. But if I'm a TV network, and especially if the Big 12 and we already got that business done, which was the biggest flaw. Like, no, man, like I'm good. Like, what are you guys going to bring to the table? So then what you have is Apple Plus or Apple TV or whatever that's trying to get into this realm, that's probably willing to overpay. But even then they're like, yeah, but we're going to tie it to subscriptions. Like, we're going to need some proof in the pudding here that this is going to work out for us too. And it just fell apart. The Pac-12 was never honest with itself in this scenario. And now all eyes are on the ACC. We had the Big 12 set the path. Like, if I'm the ACC today, I don't sit there and spend all your time, energy, and resources figuring out how to not let the schools leave that are leaving no matter what you do. Okay? Look yourself in the mirror and realize that that's going to happen. And have your backup plan in place now. Who could we go add, right, that makes us better? What can we do as the ACC to get bigger so that this is a small problem, as it was with the Big 12, and not a really big problem as it was with the Pac-12? Because it's going to happen. I don't care if you have $1 billion buyout. Like, these schools are doing everything they can to stay competitive. That's what they have to do. Like, that's what you have to do with the changing landscape. And you can blame NIL or the transfer portal or whatever you want to do, but unless you're going to pony up and pay the players, this is how it has to happen. And it needs to change to get players up to speed with what they should have had a long time ago.
Yeah, I heard Missouri's football coach Eli Drinkwitz talking over the weekend about, lamenting about how this whole conference realignment and money is killing college athletics and blah, 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 blah. Like that same narrative we've heard over and over and over again. And oh, by the way, he makes like $3 million a year. So yeah, I'm not sure that really holds a lot of water for me.
It doesn't.
With his statements. But going back to Big 12 and Pac-12, I think if everybody was honest with themselves a year ago when USC and UCLA left to go to the Big 10, and you had those two programs leaving the Pac-12, you already knew that Texas and Oklahoma were leaving the Big 12 to go to the SEC. You knew that those two things were happening. If everybody was honest with themselves and the question was asked between the Big 12 and the Pac-12, who is going to survive? In retrospect, everybody should have said the Big 12, because the Big 12 is a survivor conference. They have done this before.
Always.
They know how to survive and grind and stay viable in a world where there are schools trying to leave them. It happened over a decade ago with Colorado, A&M, Missouri, and Nebraska, and they survived. They added TCU and West Virginia. It happened with Texas and OU, and they added Cincinnati and BYU and UCF and Houston, and now the schools from the Four Corners. So this is a conference that will do whatever it takes to survive and to stay viable, where the Pac-12 sat back and, like you said, had this overinflated idea of who they are, even without USC and UCLA, where they overvalued themselves to the TV networks and to Apple, and they basically shot themselves in the foot. So I think in retrospect, if we all went back and, a year ago and had that discussion of who's going to, if only one can survive, who's going to survive, everybody should have said the Big 12.
Yes, I agree with that. They should have just merged. Instead, from the second that Texas and Oklahoma left, the Big 12 should merge with the Pac-12. That's what should happen, because you're going to need to get so big that you're, unpoachable. There probably is a world where, had that happened and there was only one TV deal to be had by the networks, which the Big 12 took advantage of, that it could have been moderately close to what you're seeing in the other leagues, maybe even enough to keep teams around. And it just was this old world of college athletics. It is the most, I used to say that baseball was the most stubborn to change. That's not true. College athletics has been the most stubborn to change. And I'm going to talk about this. I'll be on CBS Sports Radio this weekend, and I cannot wait to dig into this, because I listened all weekend long here. And the amount of people that still like, oh my God, it's going to be the worst thing ever. Like, college sports as we know it is dead. And I just continually shake my head. Like, what are we doing here? Every league expands its playoffs, every single one. At other levels of college football, you've had an expanded playoff forever. If you think that college sports is dead and making a 12-team playoff is going to make things less interesting, you're crazy. I don't give me it waters down the regular season nonsense. Tommy, the Chiefs and the Bengals will play on New Year's Eve. If those two quarterbacks are healthy, that game essentially means nothing, because they're very likely going to play again in 2 weeks in the postseason. Do you think that anybody in the world will sit there and say, I don't want to watch that New Year's Eve game? They're just going to play again in the playoffs. Who cares? It means nothing. Have we ever, at any level of sports that has a playoff, looked at it at the regular season and thought, that game doesn't mean anything, I'm not going to watch it, who cares? No. If Alabama and Georgia play 2 weeks before they ultimately meet in the CFP, what's everybody watching? Even if you know the loser's going to get in still, what's everybody watching? It's high-level football. We're going to watch it. That is the dumbest, and I don't understand it for college athletics. We have to just send it to a committee to determine a national champion. That's the only way to preserve the integrity of the regular season. It's the only way. Get out of here with all that. This is going to end up in a much better place with an expanded playoff. It's going to end up through, a more regulated transfer portal, which is already happening, and probably more regulated NIL, but NIL nonetheless, and compensation to players. You're going to start to see the Alabamas and the Georgias wave. That's why their coaches are so mad at all this, Tommy. Yeah. Why do you think Nick Saban gets up there and rails against all this every day? Because his advantage that he's had for 20 years is gone.
Yeah. And on top of that, too, you've got a situation where, and I know this is where people are clutching their pearls and, saying, oh, wait, I cannot believe that this is happening right now, because the end goal, the end result in this is you basically have another professional league. That's basically what it ends up being at a certain level.
That's what it already is.
Exactly. But we're putting the pieces in place to make it more official, as opposed to it being a professional league, but everybody ignoring that it's a professional league, right? Or saying, oh, it's amateurism. These are kids. These are students. They're getting a good education. That's all crap.
They are, though. They still are getting a great education.
But that being the justification for them to not be compensated, and for, this huge disparity between what coaches make and players make, and of course the networks making a ton of money off the backs of these players, and the universities subsidizing a whole lot of other programs based on the backs of these players, that all starts to go away when you can regulate all of this. And when we can start being honest with ourselves that this is, in essence, a professional league, Let's actually start calling it for what it is. And then you can actually be able to see it for its true value. And it's great high level football. And that's not going to change. The action on the field is not going to change. So the integrity that people are saying, oh, like conference realignment and the money and it's ruining sports, it's not going to change anything on the field at all.
The money's already been there, Tommy.
Right.
The money's always been there. It's just now it's going to get spread out a little bit. It's the same money. Yep. It's always been there.
And the only thing that I will say that I do have some sympathy about in this conference realignment, the sports outside of football and basketball, that don't have a ton of money, and you've got student athletes that really truly are student athletes, and now they've got to travel cross country. And like, I get that there are some logistics that have to be worked out with that. And I've heard suggestions that maybe you break away football and football becomes something different and the other sports remain in the normal conferences. I mean, I think that that's probably unlikely. I do understand some of that because it can start to be a little bit much when you've got, I don't know, the Oregon softball team traveling to play Maryland. Like that's a little bit, I get that. That's a cross-country flight for a softball team. I understand that. But this is the direction that college athletics is going, and ultimately it's a good thing overall.
You know what helps offset that travel cost? The $50 million that Oregon's going to make this year. Wichita State, on a budget that is a fraction, sends its softball team to Florida at least once a year. Twice, really. Like, it just, that stuff's been happening. And by the way, like, teams have played one sport in one league or as an independent and others forever. Who cares? Like, that doesn't matter. Like, we overthink all this sometimes. We'll continue the conversation. You can weigh in on the IHOP hotline. What do you think about all this realignment? I would imagine Big 12 fans everywhere are pretty excited about this because the league looks fantastic now. It looks incredible. It looks like it's going to be a blast. 869-1240 is the number to call on the IHOP hotline. You can leave your comments on our video stream as well, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. By the way, giveaway day here on the program. We'll give away Def Leppard and Motley Crue tickets. That's coming up later in the program. We'll give away some free tea from HTO, and we'll give away some WindSurge vouchers. It's all coming for you on Sports Daily on a Monday, a reaction Monday to a story we've been waiting on for a long time. We'll be right back.
FH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody, to Sports Daily. It's Albracht and Castor here. On this Monday edition, the college landscape has changed immensely. We're making our way through everything that happened after we left the air, as this was all breaking Friday to now. So we will go through some of that. We will get to some Chiefs training camp and NFL training camp news, and the Royals streak is snapped. But, some things to look at within this Royals run of better baseball that we will get into either today or tomorrow as well. Tommy, first things first, we've got giveaways today. Let's start it and we'll flip it out of order. So if you're tuning in right now, we've been giving these away. We'll do this one first to mix it up and keep everybody on their toes. Def Leppard and Motley Crue are coming to Tulsa. Guitar Heroes Unite here. It's the World Tour coming to H.A. Chapman Stadium in Tulsa, August 16th. Special guest Alice Cooper. You can get your tickets at Ticketmaster.com, again, for Def Leppard, Motley Crue on the campus of the University of Tulsa, or you can get a pair of tickets from us right now. 869-1240. Let's do the third caller here to the IHOP hotline. Jad will get us a winner. 869-1240, Def Leppard, Motley Crue. Let's do it. Here we go. Get us a winner. Tommy and I will come back now to the conversation. Look, I get it, first of all. I get that, you love college football. You love the way it is. You don't want to see it change. But Tommy, it hasn't changed that much. You're still going to love college football on Saturdays. You're still going to follow the teams that you follow. If you travel to games, you're still going to travel. I think it was the Washington State president cite that he just I can't believe now fans are going to have to go so far to games. Dude, you're in Pullman, Washington. Your fans have always had to go far. Guess who's closer than USC, Boise State? Let's stop with all that, okay? I feel bad for Washington State, by the way. I just mean the things that we try to justify here stink, right? The reality is the old model of schools and administrators and coaches and everybody taking in all this money and not kicking any of it back, those are gone. They are long gone. Players are going to get compensated. However that looks, that's happening now. So that's the first thing that needed to change, by the way, because it's absolutely insane that these players can't get paid for their work when everybody around them on campus gets paid for their work all the time, except for athletes for some reason. I don't get it. Whatever. But so that's all going to change. And it's been going to change. And you hear people say, oh my gosh, these haves are going to have such an advantage over the have-nots. They already did. But guess what? We saw TCU in a national championship game. They got crushed. Don't care. They got there, right? We're seeing this evolve, and it's going slowly. And yes, the haves still have an advantage, but the haves have always had an advantage. Tommy, 5-10 years ago, you think Kansas State's landing a prospect like Avery Johnson?
No, not a chance.
Exactly. So you have to understand that the change of again, this is why long-time, big-time coaches don't like this, because the way they've operated forever, you take the jobs with the biggest advantages. It had just been under the table. But why are some jobs the best jobs? Because you can get so much done under the table, right? Well, now things are coming to the top of the table, okay? And it's evening out. And we're seeing just how passionate fan bases are across the country because NIL collectives are collecting a whole lot of money to distribute. And I say it all the time, but these programs, you better be careful. And you better be careful knocking on the door of Washington, D.C., because at some point, you're going to lose every piece of litigation that exists. At some point, if you get a players union or something, that's what's going to shake the foundation. So you better do everything you can to keep the players happy and appropriately let them get compensated, because that's the way this needs to be done. I think we're actually doing a pretty good job in college sports of getting there. It's not perfect. It's insane. It's nuts. It's wild, but we're getting there. I think we found a nice happy medium with the transfer portal. I think we're on our way to probably some common sense things happening with NIL. And then we'll get an expanded playoff. And I'm telling you, we're going to see a couple of years of that expanded playoff. And just like, how on earth did it take this long? And people will say, well, Georgia crushed TCU last year. Great. Guess what? The season overall was better because you had a Cinderella. And guess what? Teams get crushed in the playoffs all the time. And it doesn't hurt those sports where that happens. It doesn't. Do we watch the NCAA tournament less, Tommy, because they play so many regular season games? Because there's 64 teams in the field? Do you, as a Kansas fan, watch less KU basketball because they let 64 teams in?
No, of course not.
It is nonsense, that argument. Nonsense.
The bottom line is adapt or die. That's it. Adapt or die. Change is messy. Change is uncomfortable. Change will shake you out of your comfort zone. That's what's happened with the Pac-12. This has been change and evolving, progressing, innovating. None of those things represent the Pac-12. That's why we are where we are right now. But make no mistake about it. The NCAA as an organization, they are not nonprofit. They are not for profit. The Big 12 Conference is not a nonprofit organization. The SEC is not a nonprofit organization. Any conference, name them. They are all there for profit to drive revenue. That's it. Bottom line, drive revenue through the TV networks who are wanting eyeballs on the product so they can sell advertising. That's it. It's very, very simple. And when there is demand from TV networks, this is what's going to happen. There are networks, namely ESPN and Fox, and then a couple of others underneath that, but primarily ESPN and Fox, that they want the best product on their networks so they can say to whatever national advertiser, this is the number of eyeballs that we have on our product. And the advertisers will say, where do we sign? It's as simple as that. And the money trickles down. But up until recently, the money that trickled down stopped at the universities. Like, they kept all the revenue for themselves. Now in the world of the NIL and in the world of, athletes potentially being compensated down the line, whatever that might look like, you're starting to see it. There are other opportunities on the table. And you know what? I like the fact that, this should have been done years ago, where athletes are able to profit off of their name, image, and likeness. Like, that's an easy thing to do. And it should have the full support of universities. I think it does for the most part, because they're not giving up any of their money. Pay for it. They have to pay for it. Right. So, but I do think that we're in a scenario now where if we can just stop ignoring the fact that none of these organizations are out there for the benefit of anything other than their bottom line, everybody's going to be better off in the long run. The NCAA and these conferences and these, Eli Drinkwitz from Missouri, they can talk about preserving the integrity and the well-being of the student athletes and their mental health and blah, 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 blah. It's about the money. And it just is. And the sooner everybody realizes that and just understands it and we can move on from it, the better we're all going to be.
I'm uncomfortable, I'll be honest, with young people having access in a lot of cases to that much money. I'm uncomfortable with it. I think about what I would have done with it at that point. That doesn't make it right, wrong, or indifferent, right? If I'm like a brilliant computer coder at 18, 19 years old and some company wants to pay me $1 million a year to come, what do you think is going to happen, right? You're going to do it. What would my parents say? No, I don't think you should do that. Right. No, like, we're uncomfortable with it, but by God, we're going to, institutions of higher learning. Let's teach these athletes what to do if they're presented with this sort of opportunity. How do you not become that case study of how this could go wrong? Let's learn how to be an adult, maybe a little earlier than everyone else does. Maybe you don't have to go into credit card debt to learn how to be an adult like the rest of us do. That's great news. And Number one, college is too expensive, right? So I get that athletics has funded the activities in a lot of ways of a university, but college is too expensive anyway. So I have a hard time with like finding sympathy for that. Like, let's bump down tuition then. If you really want to, like, let's cut our expenses down, especially at public institutions, if we want to complain about that. If you don't want to do that, then the natural thing to do is leave a conference when you have an opportunity to make more money to fund all the other stuff you want to do at your university. That's what I've always said. Like, these are no-brainer decisions for these schools that are being offered this massive increase in revenue. Like, who wouldn't take that when you depend so much on athletics for everything that you do? It's needed to happen for so long that when it is happening now at such a rapid pace, it is jarring to see. But you got to think about the end game here. From the beginning, the one thing I did not want to see happen was that any current Power 5 school not have a place in the Power 5. We have 4 schools right now. In all of this that I can think of, Tommy, they're the only 4 that this has ever happened to, right? In all of this, everybody else has survived. So I really, 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 really hope that those 4 schools can find a place in the Power 5. If that means they take a lesser share at another league, that's fine. I don't care. But that's the only thing of this that I will have massive like regret and sadness for, is if those 4 fan bases lose that, because that sucks. And that you can't really come back from that. Like, you're not going to go back. So I hope that happens in all of this. But when the dust settles and we're taking 12 teams and they're the best 12 out of these super leagues, and, players are continuing to go to the best place where their opportunity to earn and succeed is the highest. And if it's not somewhere they can transfer, like 5-10 years from now, it's going to be better than it was 5 or 10 years ago. I just don't have any doubt about that. I mean, there's no question to me we're going to be in a better place when the dust settles on the realignment. The realignment is it's just the next thing. And then they'll get NIL regulated to some degree. And then we'll have a place here where we can just sort of cruise on through. And then the changes will be subtle tweaks and little things. But college football, and again, it's mostly football. College football has been stuck in this rut my entire life. I even as a kid, when we were doing BCS, I was like, this isn't BCS. This is BS, right? Like, what is this? Why are we doing it this way? Let them play.
Yep. And you got to go all the way back to before you and I were born. You got to go back to 1984. And there was a U.S. Supreme Court case regarding television deals for the NCAA. The University of Oklahoma brought a lawsuit, and that went all the way to the Supreme Court against the NCAA, because the NCAA controlled the television product for everybody. If you were part of the NCAA, they handled your TV deals. And Oklahoma said, we don't want to do that anymore. We would like to negotiate our own deal, or have our conference negotiate that. And the Supreme Court ruled that was the way that it could be. So you got to go back, what is that, almost 40 years for there to be a seismic shift like that, where you go from the NCAA having absolute power in scheduling TV deals to now you've got conferences and ultimately member schools and the networks determining what's going to happen. I don't want to wait another 40 years after this time around to have everything be good to go. Like, let's get it done now. Let's rip the Band-Aid off, and let's make sure that we are in a good position in college athletics moving forward.
We're halfway through the seismic shift that has been coming, and I've predicted for a long time this is the one, and then it will stabilize. And I think we're halfway through, because I think the ACC still has to happen. Now, I don't know how fast it happens, but it certainly feels like now, today, that it's going to happen faster than it did maybe a week ago. So once we get through that, we'll get through the next thing, and then it'll settle. It'll settle. 869-1240 is the number to call. We'll come back. We'll announce our winner for our Def Leppard Motley Crue giveaway, and we have other giveaways and other sports to get to. Rolling along on a Monday edition, hour number 1, almost in the books. It's Albracht and Castor. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Justin is our winner to Def Leppard Motley Crue tickets, courtesy of KFH and Sports Daily. Congratulations to Justin for getting that win. Also, by the way, just learning this just in that we have, Tommy, some Thomas Rhett tickets as well. That
All
concert is on the 18th, and we'll give away at least a pair a day now until then. So stay tuned here today. We're going to give those away in the second hour. Man, we are generous on Sports Daily,
Giving
here
away everything. I love it.
the last couple of weeks. So I'm actually going to be at that one. My wife really likes Thomas Rhett, so we're going to that show. And so excited about that. I don't know a ton of his music, but I'm sure it's fine. I got the Zach Bryan concert later this month, Tommy. That's the one that one's my show, and we'll go to that one as well. But Wichita gets so many big acts coming through. One thing I'll say about Wichita and the music scene, like, it's so nice to have access to the big acts, Tommy. The one thing I do miss, though, and this is probably not a Wichita thing, but more of a me and my current lifestyle thing, I miss like small like bar bands like that. I love just like hitting the bar where, a band, maybe they're up and coming or whatever. That's a little more my speed, but it's wild the amount of music that comes through. And we just went to Stapleton not long ago, and we're going to all these shows. It's fun. So stay tuned to that. Congratulations, Justin. We'll give away the Thomas Rhett tickets in the second hour, as well as some iced tea and some WinSurge vouchers. Lots of chances to win, so stay tuned with us today. Comments on social media. We've got Daryl. Says, I'm an ASU grad living in Wichita. Sad for the Pac-12, but the level of play should be better in the Big 12. No follow-through from Pac-12. It will certainly be better, without USC and UCLA there now. So, for Arizona State and Arizona and Utah and Colorado, Tommy, which we haven't even gotten into this part of it yet, I love the addition of those schools for the Big 12. It gets you into the time zone you need to get into. I think that's fun for the league, by the way, not just fun for the networks, too. Like, we always think about this for the networks. I think it's going to be awesome to have a Big 12 game on that starts at probably starts at 8 or 8:30. I think it's fantastic and will enhance the league and give us as Big 12 fans something else to watch. And I think these programs are going to succeed in the Big 12. Utah, didn't need much help. Utah's been great. Prime at Colorado with the Big 12 spotlight that Yormark's trying to put on it is a great fit. And Arizona State, I would bet you, Tommy, enhance and raise their football profiles long term. It'll take a little time.
Yeah, I mean, give me an 8:30 p.m. matchup of, I don't know, Kansas State on the road at Utah, or something like that. I mean, that's going to be incredible. Awesome. You've got games at 11 a.m. You got games mid-afternoon. You got games, late in the evening. It becomes an all-day Big 12 experience, and that's what Brett Yormark has been all about. He's been very vocal. Like, nobody can say that he hasn't been clear on this. This is exactly what he's wanted. He's getting it now.
Just saying out loud what everybody else is saying behind the scenes. Like, that's it. Like, here's what we want to do. Here's the right thing to do. Here's what we're trying to do. If you're on board, see you soon. And, I applaud that. And in a space that we don't get very much like open conversation and dialogue. Yeah, he's had it. Here's what we want to do, everybody. We're open for business, I think was his famous line. 869-1240. Let's come back. We'll check in on Chiefs training camp. Still no Chris Jones. We'll bounce around a little bit, and we can get more into this. I do want to talk more about the additions to the Big 12 from a competitive standpoint. We've been talking more philosophy here and all the changes, but just from, football and basketball and, sports profile, this is going to be awesome. How about Arizona softball coming into the Big 12? Tommy, that's pretty exciting. With Oklahoma? Come on now. All right, we'll be right back. Hour number 2 of Sports Daily coming right up.
Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily, KFH. Glad to be here with you on this Monday edition. We've been talking college football realignment, 869-1240 on the IHOP hotline. If you want to weigh in there, we'll go back to that, talk about the new additions from football, basketball, whatever, from an actual athletic perspective, not a business perspective, I suppose. So we'll get into that a little bit later. We've given away our Def Leppard and Motley Crue tickets. We'll have some Thomas Rhett tickets to give away. That's coming up on the 18th here in Wichita. We'll give those away later. We'll give away some HTO as well. So stay tuned for all of that. Chiefs training camp, Tommy. Let's check in there. And no Chris Jones news. Worried yet? I know you haven't been. At what point do you think you worry?
I've been pretty on the record and consistent in saying if you get into a preseason game and he hasn't reported anywhere, at that point I'm going to start to get nervous. I'm kind of on the cusp right now.
So on Sunday, you'll be nervous?
I'm on the verge. Yeah. I mean, it's Monday. Like, let's see if something happens this week. It's been awfully quiet, which I've always believed no news is good news. I think when you start, like we had that whole like burst of like reporting, and you could definitely tell that like one report was from the Chiefs camp and another report was from Jones's camp. It's been very quiet ever since then, which leads me to believe they're working behind the scenes to get something done. I did see a report, I think over the weekend, and I want to say it was Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk that reported it, that the Chiefs are still optimistic that they will get a long-term deal done with Chris Jones. So, I mean, I'm kind of holding on to that. But yeah, I mean, if we get to Sunday and there's nothing happening at that point, yeah, I'm going to start to get a little bit nervous.
Okay, Commissioner Kleev, cough. Just kick that worry can down the road. Yeah, here's what I'm worried about is that the Chiefs' decision to make is going to be a difficult one way or the other, right? Whether they commit a lot of money in years or whether they decide they got to move on. It's going to be a tough choice no matter what. And I know it won't feel that way in the beginning. Like if they get him signed, everyone will say, "Oh, okay, good. It's done. They got it done." That's not what I mean. What I mean is next offseason or whatever other free agent it potentially cost them. That's what I worry about is if they go to this point, who else, who does it cost them down the road? And we'll see. I mean, maybe they could figure out a way to get it done. I think we're to the point now where this isn't simple. It's not just, they just need a little time to get it done. Like I just don't buy that, or it would already be done.
I think the other thing that makes me more on edge about this going into the preseason is the reports that Charles Omenihu is suspended for the first 6 games from violating the league's conduct policy. He had a domestic violence situation before the Chiefs signed him. Like they knew that there was probably going to be some kind of punishment coming down on him, but it's official. The first 6 games of the season, he won't be there. And, he's one of the more experienced defensive linemen that the Chiefs have. They've gotten really, really, really thin on the interior defensive line. And I know that they brought back Tershawn Wharton coming off the PUP list and all of that, but there may be a scenario where I think that they need to start looking at, and maybe they already are, signing a free agent vet, like maybe the vet minimum to come in and at least like provide more depth because right now they're super thin right there.
Do you think, Tommy, do you think this resolves peacefully, or like, are we just going to get to the point where it's like, oh, they got a deal done, it's signed? I think there's going to be a little more animosity than that. And I think it probably does bleed into the first preseason game. And it just continues to get more and more uncomfortable. It still on the outside and on the surface feels comfortable. I think beneath the surface, it's not comfortable. That's what I think the elephant in the room is right now, is that there is some contention here. And you hate to see that, but it's a distraction. The Chiefs aren't going to let it distract them on the field, but man, I feel bad for Brett Veach for having to make this decision. It does mean the other defensive linemen potentially have to step up, and that includes George Karlaftis, second-year player. And I think that, most people expect a step up from him this year. They need it. So we have Mitch Holthus interviews coming into the Steve and Ted show over on KNSS, and Jad is cutting us portions of that each day. It's a part of, some exclusive content you'll hear as a part of our partnership with the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, you hear their games here on our Odyssey family. But Jad, let's play some of this Mitch Holthus from camp speaking to George Karlaftis.
I mean, it's a huge jump mentally, physically. You kind of know what's expected. You know the guys, you know the system, and it's been great. Feel great. All of these year two guys, trying to do our part, because a lot of us have played, and welcoming in these rookies and these new guys, and just trying to do our part to make this team the best it possibly can be.
Watching this spring and summer, though, I thought, this defense could go to another level. Where could this defense go?
Yeah. I mean, we have a lot of guys with a lot of experience. You got that, and you got trust from the coaches. I mean, the sky's the limit.
It's hard to imagine them going to another level without Chris Jones, Tommy. At a different level, certainly, but not a higher level, right? Like their defense isn't going to be better without Chris Jones.
No, yeah, I thought you were going to continue. Yeah, no, you're right. They're not going to be better without Chris Jones. I mean, that's a given. It took me a while to respond because that's just a given, right? Like that's just an easy answer. They're not going to be better without Chris Jones in the rotation on the field, starting at defensive tackle. It's just not going to happen. And I go back to multiple conversations that we've had over the weeks when we knew that Chris Jones was looking for a new contract, even before Quinnen Williams signed, even after Quinnen Williams signed with the Jets, where we felt like, at least where I felt like Chris Jones belonged salary-wise with the Chiefs. I think that it is going to be extremely important for the Chiefs. And I know that you and I might be a little bit different on this. I do think you've been clear that you don't think that having Chris Jones will ultimately change the prospects of a Super Bowl for Kansas City. I think it does. I think it clearly does. I think that
it does. My point is they can still win a Super Bowl without him.
Yeah. Again, I think that margin of error gets really, really small if you don't have the leader of your defense. And by the way, we're not talking about a defense that is consistently in the top 10 in the NFL, even with Chris Jones. Like they've been a very average defense overall with Chris Jones on the field. Where do they go without Chris Jones on the field? Like I know that there have been like Steve Spagnuolo. I've heard interviews with him where he said that he expects the Chiefs to be right around 10th in the NFL. And he wants to see them improve to be in the top 10. It's going to be super hard to do that if you don't have your defensive general on the field, applying pressure on the quarterback, his run stopping abilities, all of the different things that he brings to the table. I have a hard time thinking that they're going to be even average this year as a whole, an entire unit without Chris Jones. And it makes that margin of error so much smaller.
Do you know how many years Chris Jones has played every game of the regular season?
One. It was last year, right? Like that was the only year that he's done that. Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah. It is, it's, and I'd have to go back and look at what their record is in the games without him. My point on it is not that Chris Jones isn't critical. Again, I think he's the third most important player on this team. Third most important behind Mahomes and Kelsey. But the reality is, and we can be honest about this because we've been honest about it for running backs for a long time. Like the way the NFL is designed right now, you have to have a good quarterback to win a Super Bowl. Everything else sort of, fluctuates. If the Chiefs didn't have Chris Jones, if he got hurt in week 4, and we wouldn't say, they're not going to win a Super Bowl now. Do their chances go down or up? Yeah, maybe slightly, but I'll bet you it doesn't move the Vegas line very much. Which is a pretty good place to look when you look at those things. It's just, I don't, and again, I love Chris Jones. He's one of my favorite players in football, and I really want Kansas City to re-sign him. But he's, and it is a standoff, and that's the way these things always go. But you're standing off, and the Chiefs have some difficult decisions to make. And if you're talking about the big picture with this organization, Patrick Mahomes is the most important thing, Tommy. The second most important thing is protecting Patrick Mahomes, right? And they got a lot of offensive linemen that are going to become expensive. So, like, if you put me in that chair and I have the decision to make and I have to choose one or the other, I have 30-plus-year-old Chris Jones for 3 years, or I solidify to make sure I have the offensive line in place to protect Patrick Mahomes. As much as I love Chris Jones, that is not that difficult a decision for me to make. It's
Who won
not.
the Super Bowl? Who won the Super Bowl 2 years ago? The Rams.
Yeah.
The Rams. Who is the quarterback for the Rams? Matthew Stafford. Would you say that Matt Stafford is anywhere close to the level of Patrick Mahomes?
Nobody is right now.
So why did the Rams win the Super Bowl? Due large in part, I would argue, to the play of Aaron Donald on the defensive side of the ball, right? So if you can combine a Patrick Mahomes type talent, obviously, at quarterback, and Chris Jones playing that role where he's probably the second best defensive tackle in the league behind Aaron Donald, that's going to make your chances that much better, obviously, to win a Super Bowl. They did it a year ago.
You think Aaron Donald had more to do with the Rams winning the Super Bowl than Matt Stafford did?
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that he was a big and integral factor in not only the Super Bowl, but just in that entire season for the Rams to get to that point. Like, it's not just about getting to the game. It's about what you're doing before the game. It's about the regular season and the playoffs and all of that. And, Aaron Donald had been fairly durable until last season. We saw how the Rams went last season, and there were other injuries too, but we saw how the Rams went last year without Aaron Donald on the field. They still had Matt Stafford last year up until a point. He got injured too, but
yeah, he got hurt.
But look, I think that my argument is that I get what you're saying. You've got to have a great quarterback in most cases to win a Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady. I mean, the list goes on and on. But I think that there is an argument to be made that you've got to be able to have that anchor defensively if you want to have a better shot.
The reason they won the Super Bowl is because Matt Stafford threw 41 touchdowns that year. Jared Goff the year before threw 20. So, like, I get it. Aaron Donald may be the most impactful defensive player. Like, he's in the conversation, a very short list of most impactful defensive players that have ever played the game. And I don't mean to say that those guys don't have value. What I mean to say is, if you're the Chiefs making a difficult decision, and the difficult decision is either 30-year-old Chris Jones, right, at $30 million a year for 3 or 4 years, whatever it is that he ends up wanting, or locking up the offensive line that protects Patrick Mahomes, to me, that decision is not that difficult, right? I am going to do everything I can to preserve 15.
But we don't know. We don't know that that's the case. Like, we don't know that it's an either or at this point.
I understand that.
We know that there's going to be salary cap issues. There always are. Like, every team at some level deals with salary cap issues. But we don't know yet that it's going to be either Chris Jones or the offensive line. We don't know that. And so I think that you've got.
But I'm talking about the decisions that have to be, you have to think about this stuff now as Brett Veach. Otherwise, he would have just paid Chris Jones a long time ago. There is no question that Chris Jones is worth $30 million a year, according to the market somewhere, right? If you hit the free agent market, Chris Jones would make $30 million like that. No problem. The problem is, can the Chiefs be the ones that pay him $30 million? And that's the part. And I think why we haven't seen this get done is because of what the casualties later on to the cap are going to be if you do that deal. Because if it was a simple value proposition, of course he's worth that. But that's not the situation the Chiefs are in right now. They can't think of it that way.
But it's also not just a simple value proposition. It's also, you have to take into account, what's the replacement value? Like, what can you go and do right now to improve your team with the money that you're potentially saving by not signing Chris Jones.
Well,
And so
you've drafted defensive lineman in the first round for 2 years. I think that's one thing you can do. And the other thing is he's 29 years old. And God, I hate these conversations because it sounds like I'm down on Chris Jones. I'm not. Like, I love Chris Jones. Love, want him to be a Chief. Think he should, like, I want it to happen. Don't misunderstand it. I'm just trying to understand why we don't have a deal yet. Chris Jones at 29 wants this kind of deal with this kind of length. He's played a full season one time. Once. What do you think happens as I've aged. I know what happens. Like, Father Time never loses. It gets harder to do that. And I would imagine as a monster who relies on strength and athleticism, that also gets more difficult, let alone just staying on the field. So, like, it's just, the problem is this isn't simple as we thought it was all off season. Oh, it's simple. They'll wait on Quinnen Williams and then they'll just get the deal done.
No,
it's obviously not simple.
Yeah, I was wrong on that. I thought that they would get a deal done very quickly after Quinnen Williams signed, and that hasn't happened. I know that you've referenced a couple different times in this conversation about the number of games that Chris Jones has played. I feel like it'd be a little bit different if the one time that Chris Jones played every game in the season was like 4 or 5 years ago. We're talking about last season, right? So he is, and I think rightfully so, cashing in on the fact that last season was his most durable year. And I think banking on him continuing to be durable. If it was 4 or 5 years ago and he played all the games and was super impactful and his number of games declined from that point on, it'd be different. We're not talking about that. We're talking about this last season. He was on the field every single game, and I believe played the second most snaps in the NFL from a defensive player. Like, he was very durable. He was always present. He was there, and he was impactful when he did it. And so I think rightfully so, he's cashing in on that. And I get that it's not easy. And I understand that Brett Veach has to navigate the salary cap and the personnel and contract demands and all of these things. And that's not an easy job. And I probably oversimplified it a few weeks ago by saying, just pay him what he wants. Just write him a check like you need him. It's more complicated than that, and I recognize that now, but I still have not moved off my position that the Chiefs are better off, not only in the short term, but I do think long-term over the next 3 or 4 years and their chances of building a dynasty, repeating as Super Bowl champions and so on, if you have Chris Jones locked up for a 3 or 4 year deal.
I would be good with 3 years, $90 million. I would be okay with that. More than that, I don't think I would be. So here's what I really want to know. And it may be what the Chiefs want to know. Can the Chiefs tag him, and would he play on the tag? Because if you want, like, just from, in my opinion here, and again, this has nothing to do with Chris Jones because I love Chris Jones, but from a business perspective, if I can get Chris Jones to play on the tag this year, that's what I do. And then I probably let him walk if he holds to, what he wants financially, because that gets him to his almost 30 million this year anyway. I think his number is like 28. So it gets him there, and then and then the decision becomes much easier if you're the Chiefs. You just come up with a backup plan, just like they've done at left tackle, just like they've done at safety, just like they've done in other places on the field. You can trade for somebody, you can draft somebody, you can do whatever it is you want to do. But that to me is, if Chris Jones wants a length of a deal that the Chiefs just aren't comfortable with, that's the easiest way out for the Chiefs. You just tag him, and this is going to be the last year Chris Jones plays for the Chiefs. That, from a business perspective, that's the simplest. I don't think anybody wants that to happen, which is why that hasn't happened yet. I do think they're trying to get through it without having to go down that path. But what I really want to know is that a relevant and a viable path for Chris Jones? Because I know it is for the Chiefs. Would Chris Jones just come in and play on the tag?
I think if he does, and you tag him, then you immediately start looking for trade partners. Maybe not right away.
Well, yeah,
but
that's the end
down
of
the road.
Chris Jones's time in Kansas City.
You immediately, because if you let him walk, then you're going to save money, but you're not really getting anything in return. It'd be great to be able to. Oh,
you mean a trade partner for Chris Jones?
Yeah. I think that you immediately start looking at that, not to trade him right away, but to at least plant the seeds of, like, we know this is going to be the last year unless he comes off his contract demands. So let's go ahead and try to have a plan in place to trade and get some value in return, maybe through the draft or whatever that looks like. I think one thing too that you have to read between the lines with the Chiefs, you mentioned that they have drafted replacements for certain players in multiple years, and it's textbook. You can read it. You know exactly, like when they drafted Felix Anudike-Uzomah, you were like, okay, that's going to be the replacement for Frank Clark. Like you can kind of figure those things out. They have not drafted a replacement for Chris Jones. They've not used a first round or second round or even third round draft pick on an interior defensive lineman. They've not done that. Now they used a fifth round pick on Wanya Morris out of Texas, I believe. But I don't think they drafted him with the intentions of he's going to replace Chris Jones. So knowing that, that would lead me to believe that all along the Chiefs have been optimistic, planning on, working on getting Chris Jones extended. If they had any kind of doubt, they would have drafted a replacement. And I wholeheartedly believe they would have probably looked at a defensive tackle in the first or second round rather than what they went and drafted at those picks anyway. So if you read between the lines, I think all along they've wanted him back. They've desired to have him back because I do think that they believe that having him on the field is best in the short term and in the long term if they can get a long-term deal done.
Of course it is, because he's one of the best players in football, right? And that's why I think this has been, like when it was Tyreek Hill, it was a very simple process for the Chiefs. They were done like in 3 days that happened. They don't want to do that. And that's what I mean. Like when I say it's complicated, on the Chiefs they don't want to do that. They had no problem doing it for Tyreek Hill. That was the example they gave us, right? Like, okay, fine. You want that money? We're trading you tomorrow. And they did. Like they could do the same thing with Chris Jones. They don't want to do that, right? I do want to get to one other thing from Chiefs camp that has been really interesting to watch. And it's because this is one, there's a lot of times here around this part of the world, like we pay attention to specific things in camp that maybe go unnoticed nationally. Boy, there's a storyline happening at Chiefs camp that you might feel like that would normally happen with, but it's not. It's a player that's standing out that I kind of feel like everybody's talking about. We'll talk about that next on Sports Daily as we come back. On the way out, let's give away some HTO. We'll do just straight iced tea this time. 2 free iced teas at HTO Wichita East or West available for you. Coming soon in Derby, but these will be good for East and West right now. 13th and Tyler West, 21st to 127th East. 25 flavors to choose from, more than actually. And you can get your hands on 2 of them for free, courtesy of us here at Sports Daily. Jad will take the first caller during the break on the IHOP hotline. Get us a winner there. Don't forget, Thomas Rhett tickets still to give away later in the show. We'll be right back with more Sports Daily right after this. All right, welcome back. Sports Daily. Congratulations to Tommy. He's headed to win some HTO. I don't think that's Tommy Castor.
It is not.
I believe that's right. It's not. Jed. Different Tommy. Congratulations to Tommy. While we're doing this, Jad, real quick, it's just because we're in the giving mood today here on Sports Daily. We've given away some Motley Crue and Def Leppard tickets. We've given away some HTO. Now we learn we have some Thomas Rhett tickets to give away. So, all right, we're keeping Jad busy. You're keeping Jad busy there on the IHOP hotline. Let's give away the Thomas Rhett first pair of tickets. We'll give away one of these each day, too, up until the show date, which is next Friday. I'll be there. Maybe you'll see me and say hi. But let's do that one now. Let's do the second caller, Jad, here during this segment to the IHOP hotline, 869-1240. Second caller, and we will get somebody going to Thomas Rhett with a pair of tickets. That contest begins now, right now. Second caller. We'll be right back with that winner. But Tommy, Chiefs training camp. So there's another storyline. The Chris Jones is sort of dominated. There's another one that I thought might go under the radar, but man, it is not going under the radar. And I think that's for all the right reasons. Justin Ross is having a great camp. And normally you can see players that haven't really played any NFL football having great camps, right? He was drafted in he was undrafted because of an injury, right, in 2022, and has just not been able to get out there yet, but is getting there now and having a great camp. And you're seeing anybody who knows him say, yeah, that's no big deal. No surprise. This dude's a superstar. And you go back and you watch the college tape and you're like, oh, yeah, that guy was a superstar. I remember him. So he's coming through Chiefs camp, and they signed him last year, and they just couldn't get him on the field. Well, he looks healthy now, and everybody's talking about it. Like, I have people that aren't Chiefs fans like, what about Justin Ross? And I'm like, I'm surprised you know about Justin Ross. But and then I look up, right, as we've, to like as Sports Center's making their way around camps, and there's Justin Ross. He's all over social media. Trevor Lawrence, his old quarterback's talking about him from Jags camp. And it's like, oh, this isn't a secret. I think everybody sees this and is like, did the Chiefs really just get that? Like, if he's healthy, Tommy, I really think now, and we'll see some of the preseason games, I do think it's probably time to start considering Justin Ross as a real asset and weapon for this team, because it appears like he's going to be able to finally get it going out there.
It's got to pay off. And I think this year it's got to pay off for sure, because there's been a lot of hype around him when the Chiefs signed him as an undrafted free agent. I mean, based off of what he did at Clemson and just the show-stopping ability that he has on the field. And so this has got to be a situation for Justin Ross coming into this season where Chiefs fans are able to look at him and say, okay, like that was a good signing. That was worth it. And I know it's low risk because they didn't use a draft pick on him and all of that. But I wonder, like, has there ever been a year with the Chiefs team, or maybe even any team in general, where you look at the crop of wide receivers and you just don't know? Like, you just don't really know anything. Like, you can look at a lot of other teams and you can point out, oh yeah, like that's the number one receiver. Oh yeah, we know exactly what that guy's role is going to be. That's not really the case with Kansas City going into this year. Like, we know who Marquez Valdez-Scantling is. We know what Kadarius Toney can do when healthy. Like, we know Sky Moore is poised for a breakout. But what we don't know, at least I don't know, maybe you have a better idea than I do, is how the depth chart is going to work out, how each receiver is going to be utilized by Patrick Mahomes, and how it's all going to play together in the offense. I genuinely have no idea. And that's why I've paid more attention to what's going on with the wide receivers during training camp than really anything else.
I think that this is the most talented collective group that Patrick Mahomes has ever had. And that's saying a lot, considering he had Tyreek Hill in a lot of wide receiver rooms. But when I think about the versatility, and that sort of depends on Rashee Rice, right? Like, as long as he has staying power and is up to par, which I think he is, without seeing him play, that's a little difficult to say. But when you think about, like, most people think Sky Moore is going to get better than he was last year. Some people, like me, think he's going to get a lot better. And Justin Ross adds a level of athleticism and talent that they haven't seen, I mean, probably since Tyreek Hill, maybe. I mean, I don't know. Not the same speed or anything, but just like, like jump off the screen ability. And then you add Kadarius Toney, whose talent is supreme, albeit if they had those four guys fully healthy at the same time with Travis Kelce, like if you put the Chiefs in that scenario, Tommy, with the way defenses are playing now, I think you could see a situation where Patrick Mahomes challenges his own statistical greatness, right? Like, could have one of those type years. Now, every single one of those receivers basically has an asterisk, right? Toney and Ross is, can they stay on the field? Sky Moore is, we all saw last year, can he take the next step? And Rashee Rice is, he's a rookie. We don't know what he's going to be. So I think that possibility is out there. I'm not saying I think that's going to happen just yet. I mean, I might at some point, because I like the versatility of this group is pretty unique. The way that defenses play now, which is what we saw basically against Mahomes in the Super Bowl loss to Tampa, that's how defenses are playing. Okay, well, look at all these guys who could be incredibly dynamic after the catch now that Patrick Mahomes has to work with. Where last year, he like the thought of like after the catch from some of those receivers was pretty tame, right? And not that exciting. So I'm really excited about this group if they can all get on the field at the same time, because I just think you're toast if you're the opposing defense unless you can get a pass rush, and it's just hard to get a pass rush on Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. From a pure talent level, what the Chiefs did this offseason is they replaced Juju Smith-Schuster and McCole Hardman with Rashee Rice and Justin Ross, essentially, right? Like that's kind of what they've done as far as replacement. And I think from a talent perspective,
lower floor, higher ceiling, right?
The ceiling is significantly higher for those two guys. I don't know if you've ever seen these before. A lot of Twitter accounts will put these out, occasionally, I think for clicks and for whatever. But usually it's like when a team signs somebody. I know the Ravens did this when they signed Odell Beckham Jr. Like they put out a graphic and it's like, who's going to stop this offense? And it's like all these big names, right? Like loading up, or like you look at the Bengals and you've got like T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd. Like who's going to stop this offense? The Chiefs are going a different direction this season. It's not about big names. If it was, they would have signed DeAndre Hopkins and they probably would have brought Juju back. Like it's not about big name ability. It's about talent ability where the ceiling is really high and where they're able to grab players like Justin Ross and draft Rashee Rice with the thought process of these guys are going to be able to come in here and do big things. So I kind of like that mentality a little bit. I mean, it's unproven. It makes me a little bit nervous. I don't exactly know how it's all going to pan out, but because of like when you sign a bunch of big name guys, the expectations change. If the Chiefs had signed DeAndre Hopkins, the expectations would have been significantly different. Right now, I'm excited to watch how that room pans out, what the depth chart looks like, and who can really step up and be a star.
Well, the Chiefs have told us, by the way, what they're going to do offensively, by the way they've been designing this for a while, right? They're telling us by the way we saw them play last year, and now by the type of players in that room that they have, they want to get the ball to these guys and let them run after they catch the ball. Let Patrick Mahomes find the spot and get these guys in some space to make plays. It's too bad they don't still have Tyreek Hill because obviously, he could kill in that environment, but it's okay. Like they've now adjusted. I think it's very clear what they're trying to do offensively. They're not concerned about the deep shots anymore. And yeah, it's a higher ceiling wide receiver room than it was last year, but it's a lower floor too. Like, Kadarius Toney could not play and Justin Ross can't get back on the field. And then you're really thin there and it's a problem. So there's some risk in that room too, but yeah, the upside is tremendous. By the way, you brought up Baltimore. I've been thinking a lot about Baltimore with Lamar Jackson back and a new offensive coordinator that's most likely going to put him in a better position to run than he has been by spreading the offense out a little bit. They've been too packed in there in Baltimore, all the tight ends and all that stuff. You want to talk about a team that's flown under the radar because all the attention was on Lamar Jackson? Tommy, they probably are getting J.K. Dobbins back, right? He's a little disgruntled about a contract, but he looks like he's going to be back and healthy. They signed Odell Beckham Jr., which was the big headline guy, and I don't know how much of an impact he has, but he'll have some. But they still have Rashad Bateman. They drafted Zay Flowers, who for a lot of people was the top receiver in the draft. They still have Devin Duvernay and Nelson, and they have Nelson Aguilar, and they have Mark Andrews. That offense, Tommy, is loaded. We talk about Kansas City and Cincinnati and Philadelphia and Buffalo. I absolutely think there is a world where Baltimore has the number one offense in football this year. I think that is very much on the table.
Wow.
Yes.
See, I'm not willing to go that far because I don't think J.K. Dobbins is that good.
He's never been healthy, so we don't really know. He's been good when he's healthy.
I also think that OBJ will underperform based on the amount of money that the Ravens paid him. And as much as I like Rashad Bateman, he's coming off of an injury that there's no guarantee that he's going to be the player that he was the year before. They did add Nelson Aguilar, and he's a good, I think, okay to good receiver. But really, it's the two consistent pieces are Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. Like, it's kind of like Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce.
Well,
like, those
don't
are the only two
discount Zay
things.
Flowers the way we've seen
Right.
rookies
And
impact things.
the upside is there for Zay Flowers for sure, but at least you can lean on Lamar and Mark Andrews. That's about the only thing that, like, I think you can have total confidence in that will perform at a high level this season. Everything else is unproven. So, I mean, they very well could have the number one offense in football, but I'm not going to put money on that because there's a lot to be seen on the way that
I'm not saying they will.
Revamped
I'm not saying
offense
they
with
will.
the new
I think
offensive
the
coordinator,
Chiefs
how
will.
that's going to pan out.
I think the other reason I think they may put up gaudy numbers, I don't think their defense is going to be very good. But okay, so and I really feel bad because it's great research this guy did. He's a fantasy football writer, I think. He's really just kind of a stats nerd, honestly. But he broke these numbers down of how much more effective quarterbacks that run are at running when there are 3 wide receivers on the field. And that basically Greg Roman wouldn't do that at all for Jackson. And then Monken, the new offensive coordinator coming in, absolutely will. And so his point was, like, Lamar Jackson's running will be so much more possible this year. And they've added these receivers. I just think they're going to be a really hard offense to stop. Now, I don't think their defense is going to be very good. That's why ultimately I think that they'll be in the conversation for the league's top offense. So they'll be out there a lot. But don't sleep on the Ravens. When we get to betting season, I'm going to look hard at the Ravens as a surprise team to do some things this year. Too bad they play in the
Cincinnati
AFC
in the division.
I think they could challenge them. I do. Their defense is not going to be good, though. I don't think it is. Imagine them in the NFC. Would you put them third? Second,
Yeah.
maybe?
Probably second behind the Eagles. Yeah.
Where in the AFC they might be fifth or sixth. That's crazy. Crazy. All right, we'll come back. I do want to talk about, we'll jump back to the realignment a little bit. We haven't really talked about how much better the product in the Big 12 is now going to be. Let's do that. There's some other rumors that there could be even more addition coming for the Big 12. We'll get into all of it as we make our way through Sports Daily. Coming right back.
$97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Brought to you by IHOP, celebrating their 65th anniversary with $5 all-you-can-eat pancakes.
This is Lisa Stofan. Heard the Mark Patrick weight loss hypnosis hype? Well, I attended because my father stopped smoking. I lost 70 pounds and my friend lost 20 pounds in the first 2 months.
Wow, that's cool. Join Mark Patrick's hypnosis seminar. Lose the weight or stop smoking early bird special, only $49.99 guaranteed. Seminar Saturday, August 12th at the Spring Hill Suites by Marriott Wichita Airport in Wichita. Weight loss seminar 11 a.m. Stop smoking seminar 2 p.m. Sign up at markpatrickseminars.com.
It's towing season, so that means it's time to come see the experts at Truck Stuff. Whether you're needing a hitch, a gooseneck or bumper pull, a brake controller, or airbags to level the ride, we've got you covered. We'll guide you on what suits your vehicle best so that you can have a safe and enjoyable trip. Whether you want to install it yourself or have our professional installers do it here, we thank you for shopping local at Truck Stuff at their corner of Central and Washington.
Check us out, Truck Stuff.
Save time, trouble, and frustration when you call Mr. Electric. Mr. Electric provides expert receptacle repair, ceiling fan installation, kitchen lighting, electrical panel upgrades, home surge protection, and more. Experience unmatched professional service and safety with upfront pricing, call-ahead scheduling, and 24/7 emergency electrical services. Save the headache with Mr. Electric. Residential or commercial, Mr. Electric has the power to make things better. Call now, 316-361-5200, online at MrElectricWichita.com.
Mr. Clean, Mr. Clean.
Of course I use Mr. Clean Magic Eraser to clean tough messes off my stovetop and bathtub. But then I discovered I can also use it to easily clean my patio furniture and even my shoes. I'm hooked.
And when wipes won't cut it, I use Magic Eraser Sheets. They're thin and flexible erasers, perfect for everyday messes, like gunk on my counters and sinks. They really are magical.
The reviews are in. Mr. Clean Magic Eraser and Sheets make cleaning look easy.
You know that Big Bargain detergent jug is 85% water, right?
85% water? I thought I was getting a better deal because it's so big.
If you want a better clean, Tide Pods are only 12% water. The rest is pure concentrated cleaning ingredients.
Ooh, pass me the intercom thingy.
Attention shoppers. If you want a real deal,
Try Tide Pods. Don't pay for water. Pay for clean. If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Pods.
Water content based on the leading bargain liquid detergent.
We're going abroad for the first time in years. To Spain.
But we don't speak Spanish.
So we started using Babbel.
And started learning Spanish fast.
With Babbel, you can start having conversations in another language in just 3 weeks. Babbel's conversational method teaches you real-life words and phrases. And with Babbel's interactive bite-sized lessons, you'll remember what you learned.
¿Cómo te llamas?
¿Cómo te llamas?
¿De dónde eres?
¿De dónde eres?
When you learn a language, you want to actually use it. Babbel is designed with that goal in mind.
In just 3 weeks, we're starting to have conversations in Spanish.
Estoy muy emocionado para ir a España contigo.
Aww. He just said, I'm very excited to go to Spain with you. Vamos a tener mucha diversión.
And that means we're going to have so much fun.
Sí. Gracias, Babbel.
Babbel, language for life. Celebrating 10 million subscriptions sold. Now try Babbel for free at Babbel.com. Just go to Babbel.com and start learning a new language today. That's Babbel.com. Babbel.com.
Missing your NFL team's out-of-market games? Not a great plan. A much better plan? Switch to My Plan from Verizon and get NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV on us with eligible phone purchase and unlimited plus. That's a value of up to $449. Get every out-of-market game every Sunday afternoon. Switch to My Plan at your Verizon store today. And for a limited time, get NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV on us with eligible phone purchase and unlimited plus. It's your Verizon. $449 value applies to NFL Sunday Ticket season 23-24 only. Additional terms and embargoes apply to NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube. No refunds.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
AutoZone is more than a parts store. It's where we help you solve problems like, sorry I'm late, my battery died. And
I need a jump again.
At America's #1 battery destination, you can find the right battery at the right price with options starting at only $89.99. And we offer free battery testing and charging whenever you need it. Get the parts and help you need to get the job done right at AutoZone.
Get in zone, AutoZone.
Restrictions apply.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bob and Tom.
Who's that Amish man with a beard? Go ahead, Carl.
Mr. Ace, did you hear about the farmer who put Spanx on his mule?
No.
He heard it would make his ass look fantastic.
Bob and Tom mornings and highlights replayed all day long.
Bob and Tom mornings. This is 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
It's time to get back to the sports talk.
All right, let's do this thing. Go.
Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right. Congratulations to Andy winning those Thomas Rhett tickets. We'll have a pair of those to give away every day on the show here until the 18th, which is the day of that show. We will have a few more pairs of the Def Leppard, Motley Crue, Alice Cooper tickets. That one coming to Tulsa. So stay tuned, music lovers, for chances to go to some of these great shows on us here at Sports Daily. Thanks for everybody for watching, by the way, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch now. If you're a Twitcher, I still don't fully understand. I think that's mostly young people watching video games, but I think it's expanded. I think that's what it used to be, but I think it's expanded quite a bit. But you can find us there. Just search Sports Daily. You can do that on YouTube as well, or just follow the Facebook page. Of course, you can find us on Twitter as well. Tommy, we started with conference realignment. Let's go back to this, and we'll get more into this throughout the week here for sure. But you know, I love the four corner schools as a fit. They do feel like a fit to the Big 12. I think Utah might feel the most out of place, but Utah's probably the best football program in recent years, and it gives you the BYU rivalry, which is just going to be so good. But what I wonder too, outside of just the league and getting better and all those things, I wonder if this opens recruiting to some degree for Kansas State and Kansas and some of the other Big 12 schools. Like, could we see any sort of pipeline now out west that maybe wasn't there before?
I don't know. I mean, maybe a little bit. It's been pretty well documented that over the last 5 to 10 years, a lot of West Coast prospects and recruits are now going to like the SEC. They weren't heavily recruited, or they weren't considering schools like Alabama and Georgia and things like that before. They were going to USC and UCLA and other programs on the West Coast. But that really hasn't been the case as much over the last decade or so, as we've seen the Pac-12 and their power, kind of decline over the years. And so there might be a little bit, but I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's going to be anything that we're going to sit back and notice and be like, wow, having those 4 schools in the conference, that's meaning that the recruiting is going to be that much different than it already is for these local schools.
Yeah, it is the possibilities in this are endless when you think about what it could mean for, to me, like the programs that we follow. This being a part of the aggressive league, Kansas and Kansas State especially, when Texas and Oklahoma left, it felt like where Oregon State and Washington State are now, like what could happen here, right? Smaller markets. Now, I think the difference between Kansas State and those schools is big. Like, I think there's a large difference, between them. So don't misunderstand what I'm saying. Kansas State's far more successful, has an incredible fan base, is lifting its national profile each and every year. But, the smaller, maybe ag-driven or whatever it is schools, you're like, oh, my God, like what's going to happen here? And to think about that fear to where we stand now, and Kansas was in the same boat because football wasn't very good at the time. Like, to think now where they are, where they have a chance at this massive league, which who knows what it looks like in 4 or 5 years. That is a really cool feeling for those fans too. And I think, based on what I've seen, that everybody is appropriately excited for the 4 corner schools coming in and the other 4 schools that were added. And, top to bottom, there's no question the league is the best it's ever been now, even without Texas and Oklahoma. And I think we'll see it. And we don't know yet, but I think we'll see the original 4 editions, right? I think they're all going to get better by joining the Big 12. I think the 4 corner schools could do the same thing, and they were already a level better anyway. How quickly do you think any of those schools competes for a Big 12 title?
I think that Utah can come in and compete right
too.
away. That's probably the one that right now I think is the most prime and ready in the present time to compete for a championship, because Arizona and Arizona State, they fluctuated in their success in the Pac-12. And it, I think more often than not, it wasn't good for either one of those schools. But I think that they've got the opportunity to build. It's going to be Utah, though, that can come in right away and I think challenge for a Big 12 championship.
Think about this, too. Full circle. The first question I asked you is, can the Big 12 schools, Kansas and Kansas State, can they start to recruit West? I wonder, too, if Arizona and Arizona State can start to recruit East a little bit easier. Because they're still going to be able to recruit West. But now, like, think about some of the top recruits that we've had that end up at Oklahoma, right? Or Iowa State or whatever. Like, I absolutely, like, if I'm a kid and Arizona's on the table, like, we've all heard about Arizona and Arizona State, right? Like, we've all heard that, how fun it is to go to school there. I think they could open themselves up too to some of this, and Colorado to some degree, maybe a totally different vibe and different culture in that city than Tempe and Tucson. But I love it. I do think it is a cultural fit as much as it is anything else. And that's what we always heard with the Pac-12. But who do you think Arizona has more in common with, right? Cal Berkeley or I don't know, Texas Tech? It just feels like Texas Tech to me. It feels like they might be a better fit in the Big 12 than they ever were in the Pac-12, even though they've been original members and in there forever. Right. I get all that.
And that's why I think Brett Yormark targeted the 4 corners from the beginning. And that's why the reporting was there months ago that those might be the schools that the Big 12 will go after. It happened that way because I do think that the 4 schools that ended up there are ultimately going to be a really good fit in the conference.
I think Phoenix has more in common than Dallas than it does with San Francisco. I guess I'll say that, when everybody talks about losing that, culture, I'm not sure how much the Arizona schools fit anyway. So we'll see. 869-1240. We'll come back. We'll wrap it up. We'll tell you what's on tap here on the network today. Sports Daily.
I'm attorney Ben Winters with Patterson Legal Group. After being hurt in a car wreck, you need to hire the right attorney. How do you find the right attorney?
You look for one that has experience and, most importantly, results. Patterson Legal Group has recovered hundreds of millions of dollars for injured people. In a wreck, need a check? Call us today.
Patterson Legal is the way to go. Call 550-0000.
Join Hope Ranch for Women on September 7th for an inspirational event at the Stockyard. It's the annual Embrace Hope fundraiser hosted by Tim Tebow. Tim actively advocates for survivors and combats to stop human trafficking on a national and global scale. This event supports women who have been exploited and trafficked to find hope and rehabilitation at Hope Ranch for Women. Get your tickets today at hoperanchforwomen.com. That's hoperanchforwomen.com. It's Embrace Hope, September 7th at the Stockyard.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now. 800-575-6986. Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS. There is zero risk to you. If we can't reduce your tax debt, then you pay nothing. Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS problems. We have a 5-star rating on Google.
And 1240 KFH.
What a show today, catching up on conference realignment. More of that throughout the week. We may have more news coming in that world as well. Congratulations to all our giveaway winners, to Def Leppard and Motley Crue, to Thomas Rhett, to HTO. We've got movie tickets to give away too this week. All kinds of good stuff. Regular programming today, including Bob and Jeff here locally from 2 to 4, and then the Royals Red Sox tonight at 6 o'clock. Had fun today, everybody. We'll do it again tomorrow. For Jad Chambers and Tommy Castor, I'm Jacob Albracht. This is Sports Daily on the #1 sports station in Wichita, KFH. See you Tuesday.